Good morning, Niall. Thank you so much for joining me today, mate. How you doing?
I'm very well, AT. Thanks for having me. It's a pleasure. Absolute pleasure. Looking forward to a chat.
Before we get stuck in, I wondered if you could tell our listeners a little bit about yourself.
That's like that my least favourite question, like when people ask what I do. I think my life more so now is maybe being an entertainer. I call myself a wannabe businessman because that kind of the next journey of my life after sport. I say wannabe because I've just, maybe on paper we're actually doing really well and quite successful, but I put it down to the incredible team of people around me. But I'm still the Wally that puts the camera on myself and does these weird and wonderful challenges and posts them on the internet. And the thread is still about gymnastics. When I say business, we've got a gymnastics club business that we're building. It's super exciting in the UK. We have 4 clubs running now with more in the pipeline. So that's cool for me. I just want to inspire the next generation, and for till the end of time, I hope everyone wants to join in gymnastics because I think it's the greatest sport in the world. But yeah, that's about it.
That's a great way to start, because I think it's really interesting you've chosen to introduce yourself like that, because a large part of what you talk about in your book is based around identity and kind of when we move on from the things we're known as, like what comes next. You're obviously an Olympian, and you competed in a sport that you trained in from 4 years old. Am I right in saying that?
Correct.
You retired in your mid-20s from competing in the sport.
Yeah.
How did you find purpose after that?
Do you know what, mate? I'm still on a journey to finding that. It's been over 3 years, and it's still week on week is a roller coaster. I've got to be honest. I think it's maybe not talked about enough, and I've had lots of great conversations with athletes that sort of really still feel this emptiness when their career's over. But from 4 years old, like you say, to 25, my sole identity was being Nile Wilson, the gymnast, and not necessarily wrongly, but throughout that journey, that's what you're validated for. You're validated for being an athlete, a champion, a superhuman. I always say gymnasts are the closest thing we have to superheroes on our planet. I think it's fascinating, the sport and what we do with our bodies, and I'm sure people agree when they watch it. So that's what you're constantly validated for, and your lifestyle is wrapped up in that. You have the intensity around it, the pressure around it. It's a strange way to live your existence, but when that's all you've known since you was 4 years old to 25 when I decided to hang up my guards, it's a tough process to adapt into being validated for just being Niall. I'm trying to discover out, who I am, and look, the reality is the whole time I was way more than my sport. I'm a human being. I'm a good guy. I hope people think that. But now it's more so I've had to really change my relationship with movement and exercise. Change my relationship with how I even eat food. I always ate for fuel. Change my relationship with how I feel about myself and how I, wrap my definition up in myself. And I think now it's just more so, I want to be a good son. I want to be a good friend. I want to be a good partner. I want to be good at my job. I want to inspire people. I want to make them smile. And I don't need this champion status and need to be doing these crazy, mad things with my body and my mind and these huge achievements. But it's a difficult process. And, when you're part of the challenge is that euphoria spikes when you are an athlete. I've performed in front of 30,000 people. I've done an Olympic Games, like you say, and this year it's a great conversation topic because Paris is around the corner. I was 20 years young. My life completely changed overnight, and I think with this book that the lessons, I sort of said at the time, that no one ever talks about the aftermath. It's always, but also why would you? Because the chase is so exciting. Your whole life's led up to this. I'm going to be an Olympian. I want to be an Olympian. It's such a great achievement, and the journey is so exciting that talking about what comes after is just not even a thought process. But the reality is there is an after, and the reality is there'll be lots of young athletes this year that will go to Paris, and it'll be their first Olympic Games, and they're going to achieve things in sport, and they're going to wow and shock the world. But then they're still going to have to come home and fit back into reality, and whatever that looks like for an individual is sometimes very challenging. You can have feelings of emptiness and loneliness and confusion as to what the hell's just gone on, and I don't think it's difficult to process that as a young person. So with the lessons in the new book, I kind of said at the beginning, I wish there was like a little written rule book on how to cope with certain things, and I really hope that this book can really help those. I think it's for everybody, and there's certain things in there for everybody, but specifically the athletes that are going to come home from Paris and probably feel that Olympic blues and have a tough time and maybe have challenges with their mental health. I hope it can help them. And it's just about me telling my stories, not necessarily saying what they should do, but the mistakes that I made and how I learned from them.
Absolutely spot on. Talk to me a little bit about how you felt on the back end of your last games, of the Olympic Games. Did you feel as though you didn't know yourself outside of your identity as this, prospective and then Olympian?
Yeah, it was really tough. I mean, look, I was made to believe, and I think society is made to believe that these end goal points that you should have, like becoming an Olympic medalist, or becoming an Olympian, or earning a certain amount of money, those are the things that are going to give us joy in life and make us happy. Like, I believed my whole life was geared up to this event, and I thought, well, if I win a medal, which I did, I went on to do, my life sorted. Like, I live happily ever after. And actually the opposite happened. So like it's a really confusing time. And then I just remember 3 or 4 days after I'd flew home, and like I said, I was only 20 years old, probably like super, super young. I was sat in the kitchen with my mum was pottering about, and she just said, "Nile, could you come and help me empty the dishwasher?" And left me a load of list of jobs to do around the house. And I literally just burst into tears. I was like, 4 days ago, I was competing on the world stage. I felt like David Beckham, achieved it was the biggest moment of my entire life. I can't even describe the euphoria and the feeling. And now I'm just sat back in my kitchen in Leeds, emptying the dishwasher with mum. It was such a difficult experience to get your head around, and like there was a lot of emotion there. And I think it's that maybe that holiday blues feeling which everybody feels, but that imagine this holiday is something that you've trained your whole life for. And, and I've had 3 or 4 surgeries, and I've been through ups and downs and obstacles, and I've given it absolutely everything. And then all of a sudden it's done. It's over. So it's like, what now? And then also of course, yeah, let's do another Olympics, but that's impossible to fathom mentally. It's 4 years away. So what I did was just party. I sort of tried to chase that, to stay on that high. I was getting tons of attention, and maybe for 12, 13, 14 weeks, I was just going out drinking every week. But that's obviously, I wouldn't tell the young athletes that that's how they should cope with it. That's probably a very bad idea, because, I talk about in the book, these mental health is very, very closely linked to addictive behavioural issues and all those sorts of things like drinking and gambling that I've had problems with in the past. They just make mental health worse. They like tangle in with each other, and it's just a perpetuating cycle. So I remember it being the greatest period of my life, but also one of the most challenging to get my head around, if that makes sense.
If you're enjoying this content, you can watch or listen ad-free on the Men's Health app by joining the Men's Health Squad today. Head over to hearstmagazines.co.uk/mh-mag. Once you're in the squad, you'll also have access to tons of exclusive content, including interviews, ad-free videos, and our world-class training platform, which features dozens of training plans to suit every level and any goal. Do you think to compete at this level, and I want to get to in a minute how this relates to sort of the everyday guy and their goals, but do you think to compete at that stage, and let's be clear, the Olympics is that stage.
Well,
Do you think? I guess it's a case of the higher, the lower, the lows, possibly, but there is an element of sacrifice and a sort of a total, really throwing yourself into that identity that is 100% necessary to compete at that stage? Or do you feel now, knowing what you know, do you think, and I guess I'm thinking of the, like you said, the young athletes going to Paris now, do you think there's a way to approach this? There's a way to come at this, to think about this, that doesn't require you to go all in and kind of have that feeling afterwards like a bomb's gone off and you're just in this surreal sort of who am I moment?
It's a great question. It's the golden question. Me personally, I think in order to reach the pinnacle of sport, you need to be obsessive. You need to be self-absorbed. You need to be almost narcissistic in a way. Like it's upsetting to for me to say that out loud, because it reminds me of what my life was like. Like, I came first. I was selfish. Like, my needs were ahead of anybody else's. My family's, my girlfriend's. You know, it was a nightmare. It must have been a nightmare to be in a relationship with, because, you know, and it's sort of rightly so. Like that those feats in sport and those achievements, the priority of them, particularly when you've dedicated your whole life to it, it has to come first. But also that intensity and obsession around it, it's a very narrow-roaded and narrow-minded journey. You know, like you say, they sacrifice a lot. Like, nothing else can come in. It's like you're in your lane, and if you want to be a winner and you want to be a champion, you have to go all in my opinion. You know, does that cause a huge crash for those personalities like that? Maybe. I've always sort of, through my experience, learned that everybody will go on their own journey with the mental well-being. Some may never. You know, I've had friends and athletes that have just seamlessly gone through their career, and you know, I've also had lots and lots of friends that are much like me, and there's much highs and lows in the sporting world. But I think the key and what I really want to do with this book is just having a bit of self-awareness is incredibly powerful and empowering. You know, in terms of awareness of why I'm feeling how I'm feeling, what these feelings are, what they mean, you know, maybe why I behave a certain way like that, or I made that decision, what good things to do are in those moments. Because, you know, at 20 years old, and then following on, when I sort of had my neck injury that ended my career, I didn't really understand what was going on with me. I was just this positive, uplifting guy that was successful, that was an athlete, felt out, I was an alpha. And, you know, I was sort of a believer in that depression wasn't real. Like, you can self-talk your way into a positive life, because that's what I did. But then when it slapped me in the face, it is very, very real. Mental health is very, very real. And the part of the challenge was just the confusion of what the hell was going on with me. I didn't understand. So, you know, everyone will go on their journey. I do believe everyone, you know, unless you're coming home, and I had a podcast with Hannah Cockcroft the other day, and she's coming home and getting married straight away, so she's probably not going to have a little lull. But I believe everyone that goes to Paris will come home and feel a little bit sad that it's, you know, and have overwhelming feelings of, I guess, emptiness, because they've just dedicated so much to, you know, to that 1 week or event or minute, you know, on a high bar that I did, and then it's done. But, you know, that they will have their journey with it, and they will make their mistakes, and they will make their decisions. But I just, like with the book, I'd love them to be able to read it and actually go, oh, well, that's actually how I feel now. And normally I probably would go out and drink 10 beers, but you know what, I'm gonna do something different this time, and, you know, hopefully it can help.
Do you think that throwing yourself into, you know, like a slightly more hedonistic lifestyle on the back end of that, drinking, etc., do you think that, you know, clearly there's an element of that that's self-soothing, but do you think that also acts to kind of stop people on the outside, or people in your life, noticing that there's anything wrong? Because you're kind of indulging. I think we have this stereotypical idea of, if someone's sort of gripped by the black dog, someone's suffering from depression, they're sort of the reclusive, they're locking themselves in, they don't want to, you know, all of this sort of stereotypical stuff. Whereas to see someone out partying, it's easy to think like, oh, you know, they're living their life. They've got it made. You know, you've been to the Olympics, you've got the golden ticket. Do you think that stops people from maybe noticing what's going on? You know what the weather of your mind is really like.
Yeah, I mean, like alcohol specifically, like, this is something that I think becomes a challenge when you start using it to remove feelings of pain. You know, like if you feel incredibly anxious after the 4 drinks, you don't. It's just the reality of it. So then, you know, for me, unfortunately, in periods of my life, these become like my friend and the medicine for me on like a daily basis, because, you know, my mental health would be getting worse. But, you know, what the cycle that happens is, the more alcohol you drink, the more depressed and anxious you feel. And then it's just, right, well, I need to keep doing that if I want to keep, like you say, operating maybe, or you spot on, just making it seem like you're okay when you're not. You know, I used to call it my friend, but obviously it's quite the opposite. And I think it's tough in those moments, and I'm someone who's like super petrified of just sitting with my own feelings and thoughts, particularly when the negative ones, what do you call it, the black dog, when there's a black cloud up there. You know, I'd rather have 4 drinks just to make it disappear. And but again, in the periods, I didn't really understand what was going on. But at the same time, you can clearly see that my behaviour is unorthodox and uncharacteristic. Do you know what I mean? I'm an athlete. I'm a healthy guy. You know, I think my parents and my family and my close friends were worried because drinking every day is not on my agenda. Do you know what I mean? That's not normal for me. So maybe there is a little bit in that I feel I had to do to feel like I can keep operating and make it seem like everything's all right. But it does the opposite to the people you surround yourself with, because they know who you are and they know that that's unusual for you and your behaviour is reacting. But then, you know, sometimes it's difficult to treat the cause or see what the cause is. It's just like, well, Niall's been an idiot. Why is he drinking every day? And that was a real difficult process for me and my family to sort of work through, if that makes sense.
Did you have a struggle to sort of put something you mentioned there has just sort of got my interest, but did you find it a struggle to really pinpoint what it was that you were feeling? And then did that then make it difficult to deal with it? That feeling of emptiness, that kind of feeling of sort of being bereft of purpose. Was it hard for you to really pinpoint exactly what you were feeling at the time? Obviously you were young.
Yeah, 100%. Look, I'm 22, 23 when I had neck surgery in 2019, and unfortunately this was the injury that cut my career short. So like part of the challenge also in retirement, I wasn't necessarily at peace with the decision. I was kind of forced to retire because my body wasn't able to do it anymore, and that was difficult to cope with. But in those periods of my surgery, this was probably when I was at my lowest, and I was in lots and lots of physical pain, which didn't help. So you can sort of use painkillers, prescription drugs, and alcohol as like I understand that because he's in physical pain. But at the time, you know, weeks leading to months, these challenges just creep up on you. You know, the fall is quite steady. It's like, oh, I'm all right. Oh, I'm struggling. You know, I'm not all right. You don't just flick on a switch and then you kind of find yourself in those positions. So just real confusion as to what this was, as to why my brain couldn't produce an ounce of happiness any day ever. Why anxiety was just there when I was laying in bed and having panic attacks at 1 a.m. when nothing was wrong. I think those are the kind of things where it's like, well, I can kind of feel these feelings of him, but I just have no idea why I'm here and why this has happened, you know. And then weeks and months passed by, and the hole just kept digging deeper for me. And I think that's very, very common. And I think sometimes I certainly had to hit the rock bottom to go, you know what, I'm not all right here. Like, I hold my hands up, I surrender. Please, 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 can someone just help me figuring out what the hell this is, and let's work through it. Do you know what I mean? And I just hope that people could do that sooner. And with self-awareness, that may be the case. You know, and I really believe not everybody has to go to that rock bottom to try and make a change in their life, and little incremental changes will make such a huge difference in mental health. And I can talk about what those things are.
Do you feel, now I know this is going to vary from sport to sport, but do you feel that there's any level of aftercare or even awareness of this, or things in place, systems in place to address this for young athletes? And, you know, the majority of Olympians are young athletes, right? It's a very, you know, across most sports. Do you feel like there's anything in place, or in your experience, was there anything in place for you on the back end of the games to recognize this stuff? Because it's something you spoke about there, like it's a gradual slide. But if you had been able to recognize some of the road signs along the way to rock bottom, that, as you say, that may have helped you avoid going there. And do you feel there's a duty of care from the adults, from the coaching system, from the Olympics at large to pay attention to this in young athletes? And do you think it's there?
I feel there definitely is. I think it is there. It surely is there. You know, we had support. You know, we're talking 8 years ago now, so like things have hopefully progressed way beyond. But you know, we had access to psychology, nutrition, lifestyle. We had access to all of these people. I think sometimes that hard bit is actually using it as a young man, particularly a young man. You know, I actually, you know, spent a lot of time with psychologists, and it was not just from my issues. I also wanted to understand how I could perform in front of a million people. You know, that, you know, it's performance psychology as well, but there were always a little bit when I was around this little, don't know whether the skepticism isn't the right word, but it was kind of like a hold off for guys.
Yeah, just keeping them at arm's length.
Yeah, wanting to go see a psychologist. It kind of felt like it.
It's a stigma.
Yeah, that's the right word. It wasn't really a cool thing to do. And now I just hope that it's not about feeling weak or vulnerable, or you're trying to improve your job and be better at your job. But then also it's absolutely fine to talk about some of the challenges that you're having. And I hope, obviously I'm not in the sporting world as what I once was, but I'm sure there'll be processes in place now to check in with each athlete that's been. I hope there is. But again, the athletes have got to go into those with an open mind and actually just tell the truth and discuss that, which is also brave. It takes a lot of courage to do that. You know, it's easy to sit in a meeting on a Zoom call and go, yeah, I'm fine, things are great, and crack on me day, even though there's probably things bubbling away in the background. That's and sometimes I think it just needs someone to speak their language a little bit, and that's what I really hope to do on a podcast like this, or in the book when I'm talking about details of my stories, for them to just sort of connect with those words or stories, to go, oh, actually, I understand that, and that's exactly how I'm feeling, and that's almost a relief to know that you're not alone, if that makes sense. And I really, really hope and want there to be a process that works well, but like I say, I always cycle it back to everybody's going to go through their own journey, and everybody's going to make their mistakes, and some are going to want to sit in the Zoom call and go, I'm fine, and some are not. But you know, I think now everybody's talking about it. It's a topic of conversation that feels a little bit more, we have confidence to talk about. We want to help this, you know, because there's so many suffering. Particularly me personally, I love, as a man, it's more challenging, and not more challenging, different. And I think we don't, as men, want to talk about feelings and emotions, and just to give someone as an athlete, as a quotation marks alpha, that's done it, that shouldn't, or is meant to be the strongest and most powerful, I'm telling you that I'm not all right. So you can hopefully have the courage to do the same.
Yeah, it kind of circles back to something you said previously about not really necessarily understanding exactly what you were feeling. So then when someone is saying to you, hey, you know, how you doing? Is everything all right? If you don't yourself have the ability to sort of pinpoint exactly what it is you're feeling, it's going to then be very difficult to open up. And you also said about meeting people where they are, which I think is so important. And I think particularly for men, the language we use around mental health often doesn't meet, you know, whether that's just your sort of stereotypical just like bloke, or that's Olympic athletes, where so much of the language we use is around performance and achievement and success and, you know, always getting somewhere. Mm-hmm. To then have this sort of what could be perceived as like fairly woolly language to talk about mental health, it's very hard to engage with that. How have you been able to sort of bridge that gap? Where do you think kind of people go wrong in these conversations, especially as it pertains to guys and athletes and people who would consider themselves goal-driven and all of those things?
Yeah, I mean, to step aside for a second, obviously I had access to a professional, like, at the click of a finger. I do think if someone's struggling, you know, therapy is an unbelievable place to start. But it is quite challenging to choose the right person. It's not talked about enough, to choose the right person to talk to. Because don't get me, I've had, and they won't mind me saying, like, me and my family have been on the rocks and had a real difficult time with this, because like I said at the beginning, my parents, they from me being a kid, if I come and hurt myself, they just put a plaster on it and say crack on. Like, they fix things like all the time. That was their job. Now, like, you can't really put a plaster on this. And as I said before, they were judging me on my behaviour. And quite frankly, I was being an idiot and not a nice person. And then looking at their son like, why is he being an idiot and not a nice person and drinking so much and partying so much and there's all this behavioural problems? Let's tell him off. Let's tell him off, shock him into it, try and put a plaster on it. And, you know, they're forgetting about the cause and where this is coming from. And it broke me. So, like, speaking to the wrong person is actually who is going to judge you and tell you to crack on and not really hear you nor understand what you're talking about. That could make things worse. So I would just say, you know, find someone that you know is just going to listen. You know, they're not going to step in and try and fix anything. They're not that. You know, they won't judge you. Whether you could tell them the worst thing you've ever done in your life, and they'll still be put an arm around you. Do you know what I mean? So, and it doesn't need much. Like I say, you'll find more often than not, talking about these things, the other person or people that you're connecting with, they will tell you the same stories. Like, they're actually struggling as well. It's like that image at work is two guys sat in the office at the computers next to each other. They're both battling depression, and neither of them know, or neither of them want anyone to know. But the reality is, if they just had a little conversation or like went for a coffee and opened up, the weight that I found it lifts off your shoulders is just so powerful. And it can just be as much as, even now with my friends, I've got a really close friend and we've struggled, both of us have struggled. We sort of know each other well enough now to know, and we spend a lot of time together as well. We just sort of look at each other in the eyes and be like, do we need a little 10-minute chat? It's like, yeah. That we both unload and then crack on with our lives. There's no like, right, we need to do this, we need to do that, we fix that, fix this. It's just, I need to get all my feelings out of my head and off my chest, and so does he. And then we're kind of looking at each other back in the eyes, give us the nod, fist pump, and then crack on with our lives. Do you know what I mean? There's so much intensity around what it should be, you know, whether you're doing it wrong or right. It's just like, just say how you feel, and you know, if as long as you're in a safe space, you won't believe how relieving that is, you know, particularly as a man.
Yeah, I think sometimes so many problems are just solved, especially, you know, how can I put this? There's a lot to be said about just simply articulating your problems, and oftentimes just having that level, that filter to go through of having to say something out loud. A lot of the time, as you're hearing yourself speak, you are getting a better understanding of what it is you actually feel, because you're being forced to articulate it, right? But you said something there that I think is so important, and I think it's such a fine line, such a fine balance, and such a fine line to tread. It is so important to talk, but offering up just talking as a sort of catch-all, cure-all piece of advice, like you say, not everybody is in a position to listen attentively and properly and give constructive advice. So as much as it is so important to articulate these things and get them out, it's not always a case of like what you're going to get back is exactly what you want. So sometimes just having someone to talk to and just listen is enough.
Yeah, 100%. And even if not that, you could just start by writing everything down. That's like a really good thing. I often do that. Just you know, sometimes I can't sleep and I need to spend 20 minutes just getting all the junk up in my head on a piece of paper, and it's like, well, I can just take a breath. You know, that's really a really good thing. And I think like I'll just have a little bit of a list of things that I think are like really good to engage yourself into. Number one is movement, for sure, and like I mentioned a little bit earlier, I had to change my sort of perspective on what exercise was for me in retirement, just because I realised how much I underpinned the definition of myself on my physical capabilities. So it was like, life was amazing and great when I was strong in the game, training hard and winning gold medals. And my world imploded underneath me when I was injured or things weren't going so well and I wasn't competing well. So I defined myself so much by the athlete I was. And, you know, I think now my like exercise and movement for me is just my time. It's my time in the day where I'm just completely present with what's in front of me, whether it's lifting weights or it's playing golf, whether it's doing jiu-jitsu, whether it's going for a run. I do all of these things on a weekly basis. And the stresses and worries of life just disappear. It's like that hour is just for you. It's just putting one foot in front of the other. And it doesn't mean that you have to be training for the Olympics. It can just be like go for a walk in nature, get outside. Whatever. I love training with people as well, like doing exercise with people. It gives you a sense of a community. I think that's super important. Like, for example, I only started playing golf in lockdown. I'm obsessed with it now, obviously, because of my personality. I'm playing off 5 and will definitely be a scratch golfer in the next few years. But I've been introduced to friends that I didn't know them 3 years ago, but I go on holidays with them twice a year. These are my best friends now. I speak to them all the time, and that community for me is just groups of people that give you friendship, they give you support, they give you inspiration, and finding that in movement and exercise is incredibly powerful. But yeah, move your body, sleep. That's not easier said than done for some people, but if you could just get like a couple of weeks under your belt where you've actually done all right, like I've had some good sleep, like it's not that difficult when you think about it, just to get in bed at 10 o'clock and close your eyes, because you probably will. This is me. I'm trying to give advice to myself, because I just scroll bloody TikTok till 3 a.m. and think, what the hell have I done that for? Quite often. But yeah, just move your body, sleep. We talked about talking or writing some things down, trying to fill your brain with some positivity instead of toxicity. I don't know what you're scrolling on social media or the people you follow, but podcasts are a good thing to listen to. We're doing a podcast now that with great people giving you great advice, just trying to like take a little bit of a step forward each day. One thing I found is massive for me was meditating, and that's the same as exercise again. Just you're taking 10 minutes, and it's literally 10 minutes, mate. And people don't want to do it because they think they're going to get it wrong. Like, I found that meditating is just the process of trying to be present. Doesn't mean you're good at it. Like your brain could be racing, but at least you're just sitting down for 10 minutes and bringing your attention to your breath and the weight of your body and just where you are and like sounds around you. It's just these little things. If instead of, for me, I was drinking and gambling on a daily basis, as soon as I just flipped it, or I was brave enough to just to make those things that I've just talked about, replace those things and just stopped engaging in the bad and try and fill my brain with light. My life flipped around in a matter of weeks, and I think anybody can do that. If they're just brave enough to try and make the first step, if that makes sense.
100%. If you're enjoying this content, you can watch or listen ad-free on the Men's Health app by joining the Men's Health Squad today. Head over to hearstmagazines.co.uk/mh-mag. Once you're in the squad, you'll also have access to tons of exclusive content, including interviews, ad-free videos, and our world-class training platform, which features dozens of training plans to suit every level and any goal. What would your advice be to young Olympians coming home from Paris at the end of the summer and struggling with the pressures of the sport and the things we've spoken about over the course of this podcast? What would your advice to them be?
Read my book.
Read the book, yeah. Take it with you. Read it on the Eurostar out there.
Yeah. No, listen. I think it's just for them to know that it's completely normal. I don't want them to come home thinking, oh, it's just, I don't want them to be expecting for it, because some might just have look. Your life's going to change. You become an Olympian, and whether you win or lose, you've got to come home. Life does go on. Your parents will still go to work. You'll probably be asked to have a week off and get back in the gym, depending. As athletes, we're always what's next. But I would just take a sit back and just appreciate what the hell you've just done. For first off, we're so right. Move on. Next thing. I want to win top 5 gold medals. I want to win the next. I want to win this. It's just like, hold on a minute. Just be present in the fact that you've achieved what you set out to achieve, and you've shocked the world and blown everybody away with how incredibly amazing you are at whatever sport. But I think just check in on yourself on a daily basis, and like what helped me sort of move on was just that period of time for me was actually when I started making YouTube videos. I had something like 6,000 subscribers on YouTube after the Olympics. And some may put, you know, my success on content and YouTube certainly wasn't to do with the Olympics. It was to do with how obsessed I got with being able to make 10-minute videos and realized that I really enjoyed making people smile. So I guess what I'm saying in that is try and find something else to occupy your brain that maybe isn't partying and celebrating. You know, yeah, you're going to do that. But I think it will be it'd be more seamless approach to sort of fitting back into normal life after that huge achievement. If you try and engage yourself in some of that makes your brain creative and sort of scratches that itch and like that boredom or that feeling of nothingness, and just try to keep busy, and exercise, eat well, sleep, and meditate rather than drink and gamble, and you'll be all right.
Yeah. That's pretty sage advice. Do you think there's something to be said for trying to explore other things that might bring you purpose or you feel passion for outside of your narrow identity as an Olympian, like finding other things that are going to set your soul on fire, so you can say, "Hey, I'm more than an ex-Olympian."
100%. Like I was, you're way more than your sport. Like remember that, and that doesn't necessarily mean what you're doing either. Some might not be able to wait to get back in the gym. You know, they might just, you know, I love gymnastics so much. I think there's only so much you can give. I think there is periods of your career where you're probably going to need to take have a little rest and take a step back to reignite that fire again. But you're more than your sport. You know, your family and your friends, and these people around you support you and love you, and they want what's best for you. And I think trying to take your energy out of yourself, like I say, we're so self-absorbed and have to be if we're wanting to step up in Paris and perform and win gold medals. And it's like, maybe just take a bit of time and see what your family's up to, you know, help them, you know, like what your mate's doing. Like more that I found, the more I give and the more I've like my true intentions are to helping people, actually the happier I feel. It's kind of it's a weird quote that I love. It's giving is one of the most selfish things you can do, because it makes you feel good, you know, like it. And I try and remember that and remind myself of gratitude and perspective a lot. And, you know, it may be a difficult couple of weeks. It might not for the athletes coming home, but I just want to wish them all the best.
Lovely. That's a great way to end things, I think. Thank you so much for your time today, Nile. I massively appreciate it. And where can people find out a little bit more about you? Where can we send people?
Nile Wilson on everything, mate. You've seen my Instagram, but I really, obviously, I've mentioned it a few times today. The book, the lessons will be out. It should be out while this is live. Is that right?
Yep.
So yeah, you can get it on Amazon. I'd love you to read it. Let me know what you think. And look, I'm incredibly proud for writing this book. It's my third book, and look, I just, no matter how well the book does or not, if this could just help one person, then I'll be a happy man. So if you are struggling, maybe give it a read. I really appreciate it.
Thank you so much, mate.
Cheers, boss.